So, hi everyone. I'm here with Simon Brennan today, who's the VP of Sales for Europe for Engage Hub. So, Simon, thanks very much for joining me.
Pleasure, Chris.
Well, it's great to see you again and catch up a little bit. I mean, good to get a bit of a catch up around what you've seen in sort of like the contact world and the engagement world, really since we last chatted.
Yeah, I think obviously with the current financial market, some of the changes, some of the things going on, and I know it was early-ish days in COVID when we last spoke. It's almost we've come out the back of that, the
Mm,
transition in terms of what has become the not the new normal, but the continued actual normal for organisations since that time, and then more recently as things have evolved, we are seeing changes in our world. I mean, in terms of contact center, certainly one thing we're seeing is automation is key, but the
mm,
right automation. I think the likes of automation and chatbots, it still can be perceived by some as a little bit of a dirty word or
yeah.
phrase. But I think by far the biggest thing is when it's done well and it's done properly, it absolutely elevates a contact center. Um, and it's about getting that right balance. I think is really important. But we've certainly got a lot of people interested in how they can automate, how they can improve processes, how they can remove particularly things like avoidable contacts.
Mm,
And that's avoidable in terms of not the people themselves, but things that are quite a simple inquiry, which in theory could be something, information that's self-served,
mm,
irrespective of the channel the inquiry is coming through. I think then the other key thing alongside automation we're finding a lot and speaking with quite a lot of clients and prospective clients about is about improvement in customers' journeys,
mm,
and making it again irrespective of channel it much slicker for a customer to come into a contact center, whether that be a voice call, whether it be a web chat, or whether it be a social channel, but have quite a smooth journey to reach their endpoint. And their endpoint might be that their contact is self-served, or it may well be they end up with an agent. But how you can do that in the most effective way possible that feels like that they're not being passed from pillar to post,
mm.
and there's choice in how they get to that point and what meets what they want and
Yeah.
what their objectives are of the call.
So do you think the sort of like so certainly when we were last chatting, I mean, there's been a huge enthusiasm around digital and digital journeys, and it seems sort of quite sort of almost like sort of one-sided to a certain extent. Do you think it's getting a lot more sort of sophisticated in terms of our understanding of it and like how you then interplay the different channels? I mean, is that a maturity you think that's starting to come in the market?
I think there's a lot of people who want that level of maturity.
Mm,
it's quite a long process. The whole I know the word digital transformation. It's
mm,
is very broad, and to one organisation it might be we've we've started using SMS as well
yeah.
as like our voice channels, whereas other organisations it's really evolving a digital journey and
Mm,
actually improving the channels and the mechanisms that are in place.
mm,
Um, so I think there's absolute evolution. There's a desire for organisations to want to improve their digital journeys for
mm,
customers. I think the way it appears to be starting to go, and I think the way it'll go more is at times, sometimes organisations would look at digital journeys and try and say, what digital journeys do we want our customers to go
mm,
down because it suits our maybe systems, processes, and the data we hold. I
mm.
think there's definitely seems to be more of a trend of moving towards actually what do our customers want and how can we facilitate that.
Yeah, so like much more of a like consumer centric or a customer centric type of thinking. And how do
Yeah,
they determine which ones to go after then, rather than because you can look at it and say, well, this is the one that costs the most. So that are we going to do that
yeah.
one first? And that's a company centric model, isn't it? How do you go about making sure you're doing the ones that are most important from the customer point of view, rather than financially the most?
Yeah, and it takes time, and I think one of the key. This goes back to one of the key activities we're seeing. It's that journey analysis and improvement, and
Mm,
trying to optimize. So it's really trying to understand what customers do want. How what digital journeys they value.
mm,
The difficulty is it's not a simple thing to do. It's not a simple thing to assess, what is the right channel and what is the right approach. But there are tools to help with that. So within Engage Hub, one of the things that we offer is we've got a demand analysis tool. And what that looks at really is it's a lot of data in terms of what are people contacting our organization about. And it can be covered across different channels. And it's really trying to harness that data to look for insights within it, to best look at not just finding out what the key themes and journeys and inquiries are, but also what customers are saying about the way they want to engage with an organization. So it's really trying to use tools to build up a picture and a profile to help support the process of like digital journeys.
And I suppose that there's also quite a nice linkage here to some of the stuff's being talked about in financial services around the consumer duty piece, but it's also around like that customer centric piece is almost like, what does the customer want to do? What do they want to achieve? And then how does your communications then fit within that?
Exactly, and I think within that process as well, and looking at the journey, the journey analysis and the tracking journeys and what's happening, it's looking for snags within journeys where there might be something. Maybe a lot of people are dropping off at a certain point. Yeah. It's then really doing a bit of a deep dive as to why people are dropping off there. Are they dropping off actually because an IVR or a web chat flow isn't set up correctly, or you've deflected to another digital channel and it's not, the message isn't resonating for whatever reason? It's really, using the data at your disposal to look at actually what's happening here, why is it happening, and how can we improve and optimize it to actually offer something that's better for us as an organization, because it helps remove more demand from our contact centers, or actually, and every bit as importantly, it gives the customers the right journey they want, and it ultimately enables them to have their inquiry answered.
Do you think we need a new set of KPIs or measures to then really look at like effective contacts? So we'd definitely look at contact rate, or we'd look at average handle time, or percentage digital, or volumes by different channels. Do we need to think in a new way to measure that across customer journeys? I mean, what's your kind of view on that?
I think so. I think that we're starting to see there's more different KPIs coming in. So I know, obviously, not that it's a new one, but we're finding like first contact resolution is becoming ever more prominent, particularly as there is the switch between automation and a conversation with a physical agent, whether that be via telephone or web chat. So that certainly is something that seems to become more pertinent across a number of different customers we've got. I think also there's probably some analysis into the average handling time, just really understanding how that differs by channel as well, because obviously it's historically a telephone call will be the longest average handling time as a live conversation piece. At least you get other channels such as the likes of email, it might be more a 24-48 hour process to respond if someone's contacted via that channel, but it's not a live real-time conversation anyway. So I think understanding the different channels, reporting on them differently, the average contact time by channel is important. Things such as first call resolution, then assessing as well, again, if it is by a single channel and someone's contacting you again, what the return or repeat rate via a channel is. Because I think then what you can understand is actually maybe you've got an average handle time on a web chat, as an example, that might be a 2-minute conversation with an agent, whereas that conversation might have been a 5 or 6 minute conversation on a phone call. But then you're finding a 40% repeat contact rate within 7 days. I think it's really lining the different reporting up together to get a holistic view of actually, well, this channel's great because we know it's 40% of the time, but actually the repeat rates mean that overall the actual overall handling time by an agent is higher than it would be on something where you get a higher success rate in the first conversation.
I suppose there's a sense of like total cost to outcome, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's total speed to outcome, and to your point, it might actually take longer if it's an asynchronous channel to speed to outcome than if it's a personal channel. But that might actually be a good thing. It's like we've got to think about all these things, haven't we?
Exactly. I think that's a really good point. The total outcome for a contact, incorporating both automation, and if that can be self-serve, to actually the different individual agent-led contact channels, irrespective, as you say, whether it's an asynchronous message that actually is done over half an hour period of time because that suits the individual,
Yeah.
and an agent can have multiple chats at that time, or whether it is a real-time, full-length conversation in one go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose cost of living is obviously a big hot topic at the moment. And I know you guys do work in the collection space, but if you do work in, in upstream in like customer care and
Yeah.
those kind of areas as well. I mean, are you seeing firms changing their approach as we sort of, as we get further into it and potentially like seeing higher volumes coming through? I mean, certainly in the collection space, it feels like there's been less in collections in terms of collections volumes, but probably more calls that are happening in customer services. I mean, are
Yeah.
you seeing people sort of like getting ready for what might come, or I mean, how are firms reacting to that?
Yeah, we're certainly starting to see that. There seems to be a lot of planning into actually, how the increased cost of living is
Mm,
going to impact people, from energy to the likely people who are remortgaging in the next 12 to 24 months, the fairly considerable impact that'll have on
mm,
people. What we are finding is there's lots of planning. There seems to be a deeper dive of assessment of organisations' budgets as
mm.
well, because obviously their costs are going to go up. The majority of them, particularly for things such as energy, where there's a fairly significant
Yeah,
for some of the large organisations, um, in particular where there is like bricks and mortar stores. If you're looking at a retail
you've got
organisation as an
refrigeration and
example.
costs and those kind of things, right?
Exactly, exactly. So we're seeing that. I think that the planning seems to be around, in view of what or some of the expectations we've got as how this is going to impact some people, what do we need to put in place now to ensure
Mm,
that we're best positioned to help our customers deal with
mm,
the challenges they're going to face?
mm,
Help our customers, obviously, as an organisation side, they're in it to make money. How are we going to ensure that we safeguard ourselves to deal
mm.
with the likely increase in the cost of living, and ensure that we're positioned in a way that we can um, meet some of those challenges head on and
Yeah.
help the people we need to?
I mean, do you see any kind of change between, I suppose, almost like marketing type communication, which is around business growth, versus servicing type communication, which is around here's the heads up, something might be coming down the pipe at you, versus collections conversation, which is something's already happened, we're here
Yeah,
to help. I mean, is that kind of mix almost like of those three sort of changing? Because it felt like collections. In the pandemic, it was definitely the latter, but now
yeah,
we've got into almost like there's been a return to marketing, but it feels like it's starting to shift a little bit.
yeah. I think on the marketing side, I mean, I'm seeing it personally myself in terms of marketing messages I'm get, as well as
Mm,
some of the customers we work with in that area. I think it's almost, and I think this is a theme as well that follows on from the summer, where there was very, very high numbers of people going on holiday, particularly
yeah,
people going abroad, because you can again,
yeah,
irrespective of the fact that we all know there's financial tougher times that come in because of the cost of living,
mm,
everything's going up. It still feels like, from a marketing perspective, we're at the stage where you're going, well, you need to enjoy yourself now because next year is going to be tough.
yeah,
2024 is going to be tough. So I think that messaging and the narrative will change a bit as we move into 2023. It might be a softer. I think value will obviously be very much played upon in some of the marketing messages. Consolidation as well, and that might be for things like, it could be broadband players with packaging your TV. I think there's going to be lots more things packaged to try and advocate the
mm,
savings you can derive from a marketing perspective, and organisations who are offering multiple products or services for you.
mm,
I think then, as you rightly articulated, in terms of collections, I think there's a lot of work and planning going into place around data, communication lines, and I think one of the biggest, most important things is, look, ultimately there's going to be a lot of people who can't afford to pay for outstanding debts they've got for certain things, and then it's about prioritizing which is the most important thing. What are my key basic human needs within that? And
mm,
I think from the organisation sides, keeping communication lines open is absolutely essential. Advocating the fact that they're there to help the individual. And yes, we accept you can't pay it all. We'd like you to, but we understand we've a lot of customers who are facing similar challenges. But what can you afford to pay us? How can we help you? How can we try and make it as smooth as possible, that journey? And I think the challenge is if those communication lines aren't open, then it's going to be shut down. It's going to be a real challenge to try and recoup outstanding payments that might be owed.
I mean, I'm certainly a big advocate of like, how can you contact people now, before they have difficulties?
Yeah,
Because then you've done the marketing to a certain extent to say, well, look, if you do have difficulties, you know where to come, right? So it's kind of like now's a great time to be a sort of getting out and doing that to a certain extent, and you can do it in a low cost way as well. If you do it in a low cost way, it avoids the cost, potentially in a few months' time if things do go further south.
yeah, no, I agree. I think that preemptive nature is definitely very important. I think as part of that process, ensuring that you've got um, you've got the right, correct contact data across multiple different sources. Because I think that what that then enables, and I know actually you asked an earlier question about digital channels and how effective and how they can be used, and how you can also try and allow and empower the customer to use the channel they want. If you've got the data to contact them via multiple channels, I think that helps because what it allows you to do then really is build a solution. We've got something we can do around like a contact cascade where you can put multiple sources of data and put an automated kind of waterfall type contact flow. And what you can do by that is start building up a picture of what's the most effective route to reach and engage with someone.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, and the combination of those. I did see some reports just in terms of, I suppose, investment in new tech. I mean, I know there's been sort of like a wave of investment that's really happened over the last couple of years, given the situation that's happened. But I did see a report that was saying that maybe some of that investment sort of been slowing as people look at their own expenses, or businesses look at their own expenses. Are you seeing any of that yet? I mean, and is that the right time to be cutting back, or?
I certainly see with some of our customers anyway, there's much more focus on budgets and the cost base for some of the external sources, things like the rise in energy costs and how that's going to impact the day-to-day sort of continuous improvement programs, their customer contact channels, the technology in place, and what they're going to do and how they're going to continue to build that out in the next year or two. There seems to be more focus that's leading to probably some slower decisions on projects. We're actually seeing there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of reviews on projects, what we're finding from existing customers and new prospects, where there's a lot going on. People are looking to learn and understand a lot and assess what's out there and what can be done. But then when it comes down to actually executing and agreeing and moving forward, I think things are slower at that point because of the budgets. I mean, one thing I would say is it might be quite a short-sighted view if there is like a too much of a pullback on things like the multi-channel approach, because ultimately, whilst we're advocating the ability to reach people on multiple channels, there is processes you can put into place to look at which is the cheapest channel to serve. And then what that can enable you, if you are concerned about budget challenges, it can be within your contact cascades, you go with cheaper channel to serve, or it might be there's no cost for some of those if it's triggering out certain channels where there's not a third party cost. And I think providing you do that in collaboration with some of your reporting, your journey analysis, and actually you're looking at, well, we can see from a physical cost it's cost us this amount to send via maybe email or push notification, where it's maybe not the third party cost. But actually, we're seeing, again, a success rate of 5%, whereas we know the cost to serve might be 10 times higher via SMS or WhatsApp, but we're seeing a 40% uptake. I think as long as you've got the ability to look at them and assess actually what's the bigger picture, and whilst it might be cheaper to serve, it brings us so much less that actually it's not more effective from an overall ROI.
And I suppose some of it comes back to almost like, what are you solving for? Do you remember the functionality in
Yeah,
Excel where you could have the solver functionality, and it's like, well, it comes back to that metrics question, doesn't it? So what is the metric you're after? So is it time to resolution? Is it total cost? Is it contact rate? Is it engagement rate? Whatever it is, and then
yeah.
solving for that, and you can put the combination in according to how you want.
I think so. I think it's really, really important that you are measuring the right thing, and you've got the right KPIs that actually are underpinning what you're looking to achieve,
Yeah,
rather than maybe quite a tried and tested KPI that you've done for years because you've always done it.
yeah,
But like, I think markets are changing, technology is changing, and obviously there's some serious challenges. I think we all expect the next couple of years from
mm,
companies to consumers, and
yeah.
it's moving with those times to look at actually, do we need to change what we're measuring, and is, is it unrealistic to expect what we did 1 or 2 years ago, and how do we ensure that we are continuing to assess the right metrics?
I mean, one of the trends we've been seeing, I suppose, is personalization, and I suppose something automation can help with, with flexibility. You're flexing your business process for higher volumes, but personalization almost like goes the other way, which creates extra segments for you to basically manage. I mean, how important do you think that's going to be to sort of personalized communication journeys almost
Yeah.
in the future in terms of getting engagement?
Yeah, no, I think it's essential because I think the one size fits all, particularly for things such as collections, just isn't going to work.
Mm.
I think utilizing the data to personalize the communication is essential. I think the good thing now is almost maybe contradicting slightly what you said about automation can speed things up, improve things, whereas personalization brings more complexity to it.
Mm.
I think with the right technology, I, I think actually, and using your automation, providing it's programmed properly within your software, and you're utilizing the data and continuing to um, review that data, both in an automated and kind of validated in a manual way as well, you can actually drive automation campaigns into future personalization contact
Mm.
strategies because the technology there, I know certainly from the Engage Hub side, our tools will enable you to use that to improve future personalization.
Right.
And I, I think personalization is going to be massive from looking at vulnerable customers and how you handle them to regular repeat customers. And if we go back to the contact center side of things, it's providing a different journey. Say someone's come in, they've gone through an automation engine, they would appear to have been self-serve because they've dropped off, but then they've called back because actually they never really got the answer they want. It's how, both from outbound, if you're chasing maybe outstanding payments, to inbound, to actually we see these guys are dropped off. How can we get them to somewhere quicker to ensure that actually they dropped off because maybe they wanted to, they got the information, but just check in with them.
Yeah.
Actually, we saw you were speaking to us yesterday. Did you get what you needed? And trying to work on the data you've got within your automation engines to prioritize them.
It's almost like that Six Sigma approach. Like, how do you say, well, look, here's what happened, and then how do I then do it to then stop those errors happening in the future?
Exactly. It's all very well. Like automation, one of the key drivers is removing avoidable contact.
Mm.
Contact where someone can self-serve or get the information within other channels or via other avenues, and whether that actually is in a message within an automated IVR, maybe whether that's they want a latest balance amount and they've had a text whilst they're within the IVR, they've prompted that, or maybe they've been sent a link to a help center or some FAQs. That's all very well if that served the purpose and it's answered what they need, but actually if they got maybe part of it and they needed to speak about something else, ensuring actually you're understanding that, or maybe they kept asking to speak to an agent, but that option wasn't available in the IVR, automated IVR. Ensuring that you're still capturing what they're trying to do and maybe serving a different journey next time to offer, a good, if not great, customer experience is really, really key. So I think that personalization and orchestrating the journey through the use of the data is very, very important.
And what do you think the biggest challenges are in terms of like trying to generate that? I mean, you obviously must have a data challenge, I'd imagine, but what are the other ones?
Yeah, data is definitely always the biggest challenge in
Yeah.
that. Probably more for outbound campaigns. There's a lot of organisations who's got siloed systems, multiple data sources that not just the systems are siloed, but actually the data sources themselves might be siloed. It might
Mm.
be out of date data, incorrect. So I think look into as part of your engagement programs, check in that actually the data you hold for customers
Mm.
is, if not the latest, it's certainly not outdated. It's not maybe in the incorrect format. You've got it across multiple channels, and there are things you can do when you're engaging with customers, either from from a spoken agent level, asking for contact data, to actually getting more data. If someone's going for an automation engine, that there's ways and tools you can help improve that. That's always the biggest challenge. I think the other thing then is going back to siloed again. It's not just the customer's data. It's siloed data sources, whether that
Mm.
be from an organization's CRM system, ERP systems. Maybe you've got a third party system, say for retail as an example, it might be a logistics provider. It's actually orchestrating that data into one cohesive
Yeah.
piece of information that enables you to drive personalization in an effective way.
Yeah. 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 No, I think so. I'm sitting here thinking a bit about. I can't get over the fact that are we thinking about the metrics that in the right way, and are we thinking about KPIs in the right way, and the fact that do we have to sort of break out from more almost like traditional thinking? So we think of it traditionally as almost like traditionally we think of processes as processes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
That's as we think of it as human beings. And do we need to change it so we become? Let's think in terms of like what's the data throughout it, almost like in terms of like how do we create that data set throughout it. Do we have a change of thinking even in terms of measures, so things like speed to action, and I talked about it earlier, and you said, well, maybe that's not the right thing, maybe that's not the right thing, maybe that's just me thinking in the old way instead of the new way, which is a completely different measure and a much more sort of data centric kind of approach that gets the customer to the right outcome, probably with the lowest cost, the lowest repeat calls, those kind of things. I mean, do we need to sort of change our mindset in terms of like how we think about processes completely?
I think if not totally change, I think we need to evolve it and ensure that actually we're not stuck into a tried and tested methodology that maybe
Mm.
did work in 2019 before everything that's happened in the past 3 years and the
Mm.
things that are going on in the markets at the moment and are expected to in the next couple of years. So I
Mm.
think what you say about moving with the times, I know we talk about it with technology, about thinking, but also I think processes. And as
Mm.
technology changes, it means that there's probably certain processes that you always used to do can now be done through technology that
Yeah.
mean they need to be assessed in a different way, measured in a different way. I think also another thing you need to do as well is I think you need to validate and optimize on a more regular basis, just to deal with the changes at the moment and just to check that
Mm.
actually are we finding a change, whether it's people contacting us via the channels they contact us, why they're contacting us, or from the outbound side, are we finding that we're not able to reach a lot more
Mm.
people than we ever could, or are we finding different behaviours there? I think it really is about then harnessing and reviewing that information and trying to use that to feed into um, different programs and look at and try and assess what that data is telling you.
Yeah. So it's not just about looking at the data where we sit now. It's about how do you then almost like use that to feed that back, and then further improve your processes and keep on doing that. And it's not just a one-time thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think now probably more than ever in the certainly in recent years, I think it's essential to do that.
Yeah. So when we look into the new year, and across the rest of 2023, I mean, what do you think the outlook's going to be?
I think there's quite a lot of trepidation at the minute,
Mm.
for organisations and individuals. I definitely don't think that's helped by the fact that whatever news channel you turn over, it's doom and gloom,
Yeah,
negativity. There's very little positive news out there, and maybe as I've got older and more cynical, I had a perception that there was something different in the past. I'm not
yeah,
sure there really was, but I think because there's been, a lot of major world events in the past sort of 2.5 years,
mm,
it's easy to get embroiled in a cycle of negativity, particularly when you're being told on
mm,
every news channel, every news station, whether you're on the TV, radio, like it's always 99% negative or bad things that are going on. You're
yeah,
going to die from this, you're going to die from that, you're not going to have any money
yeah,
to take when you go anyway. So I think there's a lot of fear and trepidation in the market from consumers, from organizations. um, I, I think if you take a step back and look at things more objectively, there's a lot of positive things. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of things you can do out there. I think there's going to be changes to the way things are done, and in terms of that's quite a wide-ranging, broad statement. But I think there's probably going to be a lot of changes in the next year. We've seen in the past few years as a number of major organisations who you probably never thought would not be around that are no longer about.
mm,
I think that trend will continue across a few different sectors in the coming year. I think it's the organisations that take a pragmatic but sensible approach to actually looking at, well, for things such as automation, such as personalization, such
mm,
as cross-channel communications, looking at actually we know this because this is going to cost us a lot now, maybe investment that is stretching the budgets a bit, but then it's that longer term perspective in terms of in the next 12 to 24 months where there's going to be a number of financial challenges for
mm,
all sorts of different people and organizations. What do we believe that's going to give us as a payback in
mm,
the current marketplace? Compare and almost not throw out how that would have been reviewed and assessed and measured 2-3 years ago, but it's looking about where we are now and what we need, what's the most essential way to kind of continue to progress and thrive as an
yeah,
organization. Going back to this, the circle of negativity within the news. I think actually one of your comments earlier about preempting contact and conversations and
mm,
doing all we can now to stay engaged and
mm,
say we're here to help you. I think that's probably more important than it's ever been to
yeah,
really just show that caring sort of attitude and empathy towards
mm,
customers and understanding that there'll be a lot of people out there, probably more people than there's been for quite a few years, who've got challenges that are absolutely no fault of their own.
yeah,
And it's at this time that if companies support them in the right way, and obviously a lot of that support can be underpinned by technology to help that process,
mm,
but if they support them in the right way, they've probably got a more loyal customer than they ever had for a
yeah,
longer period of time. I think when things really start to turn, turn over and things start to improve, the markets start to improve. I think the value and reward for doing that in the right way, I think there'll be really, really
yeah,
significant payback, and the organisations who have done things in the right way will definitely benefit come
yeah.
that time.
Yeah. Well, Simon, as ever, it's great to chat with you. Thanks very much for making the time. I really appreciate it, and some really interesting insights. And we'll just have to see how the year kind of plays out.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure, Chris, and likewise, always good to speak with you.